translation. I want to thank you for being here and trust with the work we do in animal equality. Thank you. Okay, hoy voy a hablarles de una histórica reforma que aprobamos en Jalisco este año.
Today she's going to be speaking about a landmark reform in the state of Jalisco, Mexico.
Esta imagen podría reflejar, tal vez decirles un poco, la emoción que sentí al ver en los muros del Congreso las imágenes de las investigaciones de igualdad animal.
The image that she's sharing here is just to give a brief example of the pride that she has in seeing this issue being discussed in the halls of Congress.
Quiero compartirles un poco de cómo desarrollamos la estrategia.
She wants to share just a little bit how we developed this strategy.
Durante 2016 y 2017 investigamos más de 31 rastros en México.
In 2016 and 2017, Animal Equality investigated more than 30 slaughterhouses in Mexico.
Analizamos las evidencias y nos dimos cuenta que podíamos incidir en una de las reformas más históricas que podría darle protección a millones de animales en nuestro país.
Okay. They analyzed the evidence from the undercover investigations and determined that they could develop a strategy to create a landmark change for animals in Mexico.
Por esa razón, durante 2018 y 2019, nuestro equipo de investigaciones inició dos nuevas investigaciones.
And it's for that reason in 2018 and 2019, we had two very specific investigations to support this.
Para hacer una proposición con uno de los diputados que en ese momento era mayoría política en el estado de Jalisco.
In order to submit a proposal to the governing party in Mexico.
Mostramos de forma interna las evidencias con la mayoría política de las comisiones del Congreso. Mostramos en una reunión interna con las comisiones del Congreso las evidencias obtenidas.
We showed the footage to a select group of legislatures in a closed-door session.
Y decidimos que queríamos hacerlo público y que queríamos que no solo Jalisco lo supiera, sino también todo México.
And we decided that we wanted to make these images public so that everyone in Jalisco could see this.
Nuestro director de investigaciones, Sean, va a compartirles lo que encontraron en las investigaciones.
And Sean, our international director of investigations, will share with you what we discovered in those investigations.
So like Dulce was saying, in 2016 and 2017, we visited over 30 slaughterhouses in the state of Jalisco. The images that go along with the investigation are extremely graphic. I'm not playing any video, but the following images contain scenes of the cruelty that we documented. So just know that for the next set of slides, they will feature these graphic images. So, so in determining the strategy, we knew that we had to not only expose the cruelty, but then create the proof that there needed to be change at the legislative level. So we began visiting slaughterhouses and documenting the common practices that were going on, and these were all municipal slaughterhouses that supplied towns in the region. And one of the common practices was stunning animals by using blunt instruments, and this worker is using an axe to stun the pigs in the slaughterhouse. All of this was done in full view of the other pigs that were awaiting slaughter. And the animals that were awaiting slaughter would be brought in and could see the other animals already being bled and processed, creating an extremely stressful environment for them. Cows were restrained using ropes around their necks before they were stunned. And goats and sheep had their throats slit without being stunned. And this became part of one of the most important measures that we were asking for, and that was the inclusion of stunning before slaughter as a crime to be put to the legislature. In one slaughterhouse, there was rooms full of pigs that would be killed in front of each other. And after we documented all of these procedures in the first round of visits, we then had to go back and make a second round of visits because what we were trying to establish is that the cruelty is ongoing and that the common practices that everyone accepted were in violation of practices that were considered norms in other countries. And after completing the investigations, we prepared a report to gain more support from veterinarians at universities. And so in the report, what I actually did was break down the amount of time it took for each animal to die using these methods. And one of the most common methods for killing pigs was to stab them in the side of their body and let them bleed to death. And you can see in the top example, there was one pig that we documented that stayed alive for over 14 minutes after being stabbed. And they would slowly suffocate on their own blood before dying. And it was when we watched these images from the US, it's easy to kind of cast judgment on the workers and think that the people were very cruel and were doing this in a malicious way. But in understanding the landscape, we had to break things down and propose it in a very technical way because all of these procedures were very common and the slaughterhouses were set up in a way that workers were not trained or given any other method of killing the animals. So the target of the investigations was not to expose workers and cast them in a bad light, but to actually influence the lawmakers so that the practices would be stopped throughout the region.
Es muy fuerte. Y ahora viene la parte emocionante porque si bien vimos las cosas más terribles, Jalisco es el mayor productor de alimentos de origen animal en México.
So the images are very intense, and here's, it's very emotional, but what she's about to share is the good news about what happened in the state of Jalisco, which is the primary animal agricultural state in Mexico.
Más de 211 millones de animales son ya protegidos hoy en el Código Penal.
Because of these efforts, more than 211 million animals in Jalisco alone are now protected under this new reform.
La imagen presenta el día en que posicionamos la iniciativa dentro del Congreso.
This image shows the day in which we presented this legislative initiative in the legislature of Jalisco.
Un solo diputado presentó la iniciativa, pero tras ver las imágenes dentro del Pleno, 36 de los 38 diputados firmaron y se adhirieron a la iniciativa.
So one legislator introduced the measure, but after seeing the footage of the investigation, 36 out of the 38 other legislators decided that they would sign on to this initiative and support it.
Y los involucramos en la campaña.
And we brought him in to be active into the campaign.
Como resultado, tuvimos una iniciativa aprobada el 5 de abril.
On April 5th of this year, the legislature voted and passed this initiative.
3 meses después de haber iniciado la campaña.
Only 3 months after we kicked off the campaign.
Esta reforma no solo significa la protección y la visibilización de un grupo de animales que nunca han sido protegidos en las leyes mexicanas.
This reform not only involves farm animals that have never ever been taken into consideration in the laws of Mexico.
Como en cada modificación de reforma, siempre tenemos la oportunidad de pedir y articular más cosas para más animales.
But in every change, we're able to ask for more and include even more animals.
En este caso, en Jalisco, esta reforma prohíbe las peleas de perros, el corte de orejas y cola en animales por estética.
Under this reform, it not only protects the 211 million farm animals, but in addition, it also prohibits dogfighting. It also prohibits the tail docking and ear notching of dogs for aesthetic reasons.
Abandono de animales y venta de animales en vía pública.
Also, abandoning animals is outlawed, as well as selling animals in public.
Y protege a los niños de actos de violencia frente a los adultos, porque nuestras investigaciones revelaron que había niños dentro de los rastros.
And it also prohibits children being involved in this, seeing this violence, because what we found in our investigations, unbelievably, in the slaughterhouses, there would be children.
Y esta reforma asegura un cambio de sistema o de estructura donde estamos trabajando o se trabajó en la reforma para que los managers, los médicos veterinarios y los directores sean quienes sean acusados de crueldad animal. En esta reforma
In this reform,
se considera los responsables de la crueldad animal a los managers, los directivos y los médicos veterinarios.
got it. So under this reform, the people that are responsible are not just the workers, but rather the vets, the managers of the facilities, and the directors of the facilities.
Lo siguiente es que el gobierno de Jalisco tiene 1 año para asegurar las facilidades y cumplir esta reforma solo para rastros.
So the state of Jalisco has 1 year to implement all of these changes.
Estamos trabajando para la vinculación y la articulación a nivel municipal.
So we're working to ensure the socialization of this initiative.
Hemos elegido los siguientes 5 estados para repetir esta estrategia.
And we're replicating this successful strategy in 5 other states of Mexico.
Con 6 estados lograremos una iniciativa a nivel federal.
And if we're able to leverage this one victory into other 5 states, we'll meet the threshold of 6 states in order to introduce it at the federal level.
Now, quiero que sean parte de esta historia.
She wants you all to see and be a part of this victory.
Le informo, diputado presidente, 30 votos a favor, 6 abstenciones, 0 en contra, un total de 37 votos con 31 votos a favor.
you so much for the presentation. Oh, I'm not sure if it's working. Oh, thank you so much for the presentation. So one of the big barriers in the U.S. is we have a lot of entrenched moneyed interests, like people that are in the pockets of these, a lot of times it's dairy and meat corporations. And did you have that same sort of opposition in Mexico? And if so, how did you overcome that? Thank you.
Sí tenemos mucha oposición, pero tenemos un trabajo. ProAn es una de las empresas, es el mayor productor a nivel mundial de huevo y carne.
So yes, there is a lot of resistance, and this company that she mentioned is one of the largest meat and egg producers in the world.
Para nosotros es importante identificar el trabajo corporativo, a nivel corporativo, y tener reuniones con ellos como grupos de trabajo de oposición. Okay. En México tenemos dos áreas, la legislativa, que sería esta, y la segunda es la vinculación corporativa. Y a través de estas dos áreas buscamos que la oposición conozca, que nos conozca y que sepa que vamos a trabajar para mejorar la situación de los animales y que también podemos generar cambios que desde la vinculación corporativa ellos puedan implementar.
So we want the opposition to know who we are and the work that we're doing, and know that we can introduce things that they can then implement.
Y no solo eso, sino que tenemos los mayores productores del país que exportan a Estados Unidos o exportan a otros países están en México. Sí hay un sistema de corrupción, hay un sistema de poca transparencia, pero nos aseguramos de estar en todas las reuniones de grupo de trabajo. Si se tocan temas de animales por parte de la industria, tenemos un grupo técnico que acude a estas reuniones. Okay. Nos aseguramos de estar presentes en toda la toma de decisiones de la industria.
So we make sure that we are there present when the industry are making these decisions.
Muchas veces no podemos incidir como quisiéramos, pero estamos presentes y podemos recomendar y podemos ser oposición.
So even if we can't assure ourselves of changes, we can at least present ideas and alternatives and oppose what they're doing, what the industry is doing.
It's the way we can move from now.
So I know at least in America, whenever legislation is proposed, it's frequently modified and key pieces of the legislation may be removed in the process of going through the legislative process. Were there clauses in your legislation that you felt were excluded, or did you end up having to remove pieces that you wish that you were able to include?
No, actually I have very lucky about that because we do it all the proposal. Only they don't want to fight it. This is the topic they don't want to include in any legislation. But no, in this case, is all the project we do it, and this is the great opportunity for us because I work a lot with this politician and they have trust because we ask the things we can implement it. It's not like a dream, it's we need to do that and the proposal include that, everything is included.
Hi, so I have a few questions, you don't have to answer them all, but I was curious as to what exactly was outlawed and if you have the text of the law available online somewhere where we could see it. I was also interested in whether, like in the US, Mexico has 3 different realms of what you might consider animals being used for food. The farming, the transport, and the slaughter. Like in the US, those are treated separately. And I was also interested in if, or whether Mexico has the same sort of ag laws that some of our states have.
Yeah, the legislation is public in el diario oficial de la Federación.
So the law is publicly available, so you can see it. And we can also send it to you.
Y
What was the second?
the transportation. Okay.
Yeah.
En México tenemos normas de dar muerte a los animales y de transportar o manejar animales vivos.
Yeah, so there are 2 norms,
métodos para la muerte de los animales,
So how animals are slaughtered
transporte y manejo de animales.
and then the transportation of animals.
Esta reforma incluye las dos violaciones. Si no se cumplen esas dos normas, es un delito de crueldad animal.
And this new reform incorporates both of those issues. Y
si tenéis leyes mordaza en México, ACAC laws in Mexico, if they are.
Not yet. No, solo viene fuerte el tema del etiquetado de productos, pero esto es para reducir las alternativas vegetales. Pero mordaza.
She's saying that no, there are no AGAC laws in Mexico at the moment. The only thing is the industry is trying to introduce are laws that bans or prohibits the use of the term milk for plant-based milks or things like that.
Para estas iniciativas lo que se pide es que incluyan huella hídrica, huella de carbono y uso de suelo, entonces es la forma en la que detenemos estas legislaciones.
So what she has responded to those initiatives is that then those dairy products should then include information about the use of land and the gas emissions and basically the impact that those products have on the environment, and of course like the farmers don't want any of that.
We stop this now.
Oh, hi. My name is Sharon Tucker, and I don't know who exactly to direct these questions to, but I have two sort of main questions. And the first one is, I know that an organization called ARM Investigations recently got a lot of mainstream media press coverage over their investigation of dairy farms. And I was, with all the investigations that have been done by animal rights groups, ad nauseum, I was just so pleased to see the mainstream media pick up on this. And I'm curious, what was it about that particular organization or that particular investigation that was able to get the kind of coverage that they got in the media that they did? And have you been able to sort of use that as an example of ways that you could possibly do the same in your organization, Animal Equality, or in other countries? And then my second line of question is, I am a huge supporter of an organization called Direct Action Everywhere, but I'm not a fan of all that they do, when they go into restaurants and stuff like that. I wish they wouldn't do stuff like that. But the videos, I don't know if you're familiar with that organization or the videos that they produce, but they produce videos where not only do they go in and they document the horrific abuses that go on, but they actually rescue these animals. And it's sort of like a happy ending story. But of course, they're being threatened with felonies, and they've got all sorts of stuff going on in the courts. So I was wondering if you could speak to maybe, that organization, or maybe the differences between how you do your investigations and whether there's some complementary aspects to, we can't all be in jail because then we wouldn't all be able to do activism. But I admire them for their courage and think that they complement your type of investigative model. And so I was wondering if you could speak to that as well. Thanks.
I think generally speaking, animal activism takes all types of tactics, so there isn't going to be one thing that solves all the problems. And that's just kind of broadly addressing that. We do investigations different than what DXE is doing in terms of the open rescues. Our goal with investigations is to have these types of legislative change, or to use the evidence that we gather for legal reforms, or to have charges pressed against companies. So if you're removing animals within the context of those investigations, it jeopardizes the ability for that evidence to be used in a legislative process or in the legal process, because your findings become obscured by these other legal issues. And that's something that they've decided is their focus, whereas we're focusing on these other aspects. With the ARM investigation, I think that the media is always willing to cover investigations, and sometimes there is kind of the perfect synthesis of the media taking interest in one particular investigation and it becoming viral. There's not always the exact reason as to why one gets picked up and another one falls outside of the mainstream coverage. I think the general public is always very interested in investigations and want to know what happens on farms because it is something that's so obscured from their daily life. And so it's always great when investigations get that wide coverage. In Mexico, it's something that is very new to people. These considerations and having animals considered under the law is very new. It's something that we had to do an enormous amount of work on. You can see that the conditions are so extreme there, and it's not because people were celebrating the cruelty, it's simply because no one had challenged it in the way that that this initiative had done before. So sometimes, the investigation might be the first, and that's why it gets so much coverage, and sometimes there's just that kind of perfect timing, and that captivates the public's attention.
Okay, thank you.
I was coming to help with the question, but you were perfect. I will say that being based in 8 countries and having been operating for over a decade, we have been able to get mainstream media coverage on all of our investigations. So whether it's the Times of India, the New York Times, we really have been able to get top-tier coverage on our work thanks to the amazing work of my colleagues and actually our 2 founders, Sharon Muneth and Jose Valle, who are here at the front, just so you all know who they were actually in prison many, many years ago at the beginning of founding this organization for that kind of work. Thankfully that was thrown out of court, but it is bravery like that and it's the support of people like you in the room that have helped make this a topic that's more popular. I was a journalist originally, and back in those days, these sorts of issues were not covered at all by the mainstream media, but there's a growing awareness among journalists internationally that this is a topic that we must cover and focus on. And so the video content in particular is what really resonates with the journalists and gives them the kind of materials that they can utilize and that then can go viral thanks to social media.
Any other questions? Are the snacks?
I'll answer your question. Here in the United States, we're trying to pass a law that will prevent the slaughter of horses, and we know that a lot of horses. And we know that a lot of horses are kidnapped here in the United States and they're sent over to Mexico for slaughter. And I was wondering how your law addresses slaughter of horses.
So I don't know if you heard, but it also includes horses.
Only in Jalisco.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Hey everybody, thank you so much for providing such a wonderful lunch and learn session. I was curious if you could provide an overview of maybe the top 3 ways to engage the legislators and politicians on these issues, because it could be potentially politically risky for some politicians to get involved with this stuff, noting the vested interests as someone had mentioned earlier. So I was just curious if you would mind sharing that.
En México, muchos políticos toman la causa animalista o de protección animal para hacer política. Y en el caso de Salvador Caro.
yeah. So Dulce spent a lot of time.
I'm just going to screw this all up for everybody.
Dulce cultivated a relationship over a considerable amount of time with the specific legislator who introduced the initiative.
Pero es muy común que solo tomen la bandera o el tema y que no es genuino.
But it is the case often that a lot of the legislators will only speak about it, but not actually support the measure. So they will use it for their own political gain, but not really support the measures that we've introduced. But it wasn't the case for this one particular legislator.
Pero en el caso a nivel federal, debemos buscar un grupo de políticos que lo traigan en su agenda al menos 3 años atrás.
So we look to ensure that the political party that we are pitching our proposals have actually been talking about these issues over a considerable amount of time.
No solo este año que es el momentum, ¿no?
Yeah, so not just now, sort of like a popular thing, but rather they have invested time and effort into supporting something like this.
Y en el caso de Jalisco, este diputado, con él se logró dejar de usar animales en los circos, siendo Jalisco Zapopan y Guadalajara las primeras ciudades en todo México en prohibir circos con animales, y fue con el mismo diputado.
So we have worked with this specific legislator in the past to support not using animals in circuses in the state of Jalisco.
Sorry about that.
And I'll just add that in terms of proposing something, you have to have all of the facts ahead of time and show the problem is widespread. So that in this case, it was affecting all of the animals being killed for food in the state of Jalisco. It wasn't an isolated example of one small slaughterhouse that was outside of the norms. This was the entire state. And so the only way to address that is through legislative change. So if you have all of that documentation and you have your evidence and the facts to be able to present so that the legislators feel comfortable about the argument that you're wanting them to make to the rest of the assembly.